Welcome to Style Masterclass, the podcast that teaches women to look stylish and feel confident so that they can show up ready to conquer and slay no matter what size they are. I'm your host, Miss J. You ready? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Style Masterclass podcast. I have a very special treat for you today. And she's nodding along, so she agrees.
I am a treat.
She's a delight. I'm so excited to present to you my mentor, Brooke Castillo. We're going to do an ongoing series, obviously the mentor series on the podcast. And Brooke is here, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and let her do the spiel, and then we'll dive into our conversation. So, Brooke, take it away.
Hi, I'm Brooke Castillo. I would say, a coach to the master coaches. I'm a mentor to very successful, high achieving, amazing women, one of which is Judith. And it's actually so interesting it's kind of out of body sometimes when somebody says that to you, like, you're my mentor, because especially like today, I feel like such a mess in my own life. You know what I mean? I'm just like, how is it possible that I mentor anyone ever? But I do. And I'm able to, I think, see such extraordinary success inside of people before they manifest it in their life. And so I think that's why I do what I do. It's almost like I'm a success psychic.
What? I like that. That should go on your bio. Next time you give a speaking engagement, just freak out the crowd. Like, I'm a
That just came to me. I've never said that before, but that is kind of what it is. Like, I see people and their potential and what they can create, like, especially business-wise, so clearly. And so I'm able to believe in it so much harder than my clients because they can't yet see it for themselves. But for me, I can see it so clearly.
And I've witnessed you just like drop, like you call it possibility dropping.
Yeah.
Like you just come along and you like say something to someone. You have this like look of like, it's like neutrality and love, like all mixed together on your face. And you can just watch their brain explode. And you're like, yes, it did. I just said it. Mm-hmm.
That just happened. Yeah.
That just happened.
I was just actually thinking about this with like, this is what's so interesting. So as kind of a teacher and a mentor, I coach and a coach, right? So I coach people through their thoughts, but also as a mentor, I feel like I do more consulting and I'm able to kind of see pathways for people that they can't yet see for themselves only because I'm right ahead of them. It's like I've already crossed that river. I know that this is the best place. This is the best way to cross it. And how sometimes when people don't take that advice or heed that advice or listen to what I say, I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but my best friends, both of them know who they are.
Y'all just been called
out.
It's
really challenging to watch, like them not really see what I see in them. Right.
You know what? I think it's such an interesting question. I was listening to a podcast from one of your friends after you had a podcast with Layla Hormozi.
Yeah.
I went and like listened, and there was a really great podcast with Alex Hormozi. And he was saying, if I was in front of Elon Musk, I wouldn't ask him like mundane like questions. Now I'm paraphrasing what he said, but I would ask him, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? And I just thought, whoa, like if we approach these kinds of relationships, because I think at the heart, a mentor-mentee is a relationship.
Yeah.
If we approach the relationship from that place, I wonder how different the dynamic would be more regularly if we came to you and were like, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, actually. I think, and like what I was just saying, like for me, I think everybody needs a mentor, and that, including me, everyone needs a coach. Like, I've been having like all sorts of like mental shenanigans going on in my head lately that I've had to be coaching myself on. I feel like a lot of relationship trauma has come up for me recently. And so I'm like trying to work through that, and it takes away a lot of like my ability to focus. And I was on a call the other day with someone, and he was like, I think maybe you should use that model thing that you have. I think maybe you should use that on yourself. And he was so right. I came to this meeting with like a terrible attitude, was like saying all sorts of negative things, which isn't normally like me. And he was like saying that. And I was like, it's so good. And that's kind of what you mean. It's like sometimes you just need someone outside of you to just point out, hey, you're a little negative today. you're acting a little crazy. Or, hey, did you hear yourself just say this thing? Right? Because it's all an indicator of where you are emotionally and cognitively, and just having someone to kind of point that out to you. But I also think so that's kind of the coaching piece of the mentorship, but also being able to set goals and look into like kind of future ideas without any sense of doubt or worry. Like that's what a mentor can do. They're not in your brain worried about all the stuff you're worried about, and they can see it so clearly. And so when I have mentors say to me, well, you should already be at 100 million and you should be at 1 billion and you should be doing, and they're just saying it so like casually, it's kind of like exactly what you're saying. Like they can see stuff I can't yet see because of my own cloud in my own brain.
Yeah. So I think and I think this is a natural, great segue because you made a little bit of a nuanced distinction between like teaching, consulting, coaching versus mentoring.
Yeah.
And how do you see maybe those different roles or how intertwined are they for you?
So I think mentoring is very similar to consulting. So like the difference between coaching and consulting is coaching, I'm going to help you look at your brain and figure out what's going on in there. And so when I'm coaching someone, I very rarely give them advice and tell them what I think they should do. When I'm mentoring or consulting someone, I am giving very specific advice. And it's typically in business stuff that I do mentoring. I don't, give advice in terms of relationships, and unless they're like business strategic relationships. And kind of, I feel like mentoring, consulting, teaching are kind of, when it comes to business, are kind of a different activity than coaching. And one of the reasons why I think I'm such a great mentor is because I'm able to do both. I'm able to coach and mentor. So I can say to you, hey, I think you should make $5 million. And this is how I think you could probably do it. And then you're going to freak out. And then I can coach you.
And I'm going to cry because every time I get coached by you, I cry.
But then I have the ability to coach you. Whereas some of my mentors don't know how to coach, right? They just see like logically and mathematically that this is how much money I should be making. And then they kind of drop me and have me coach myself to figure it out.
What is that experience like for you? Because you shared with us some of the coaching that you're getting and not coaching necessarily, like the new learning and the teachings and the
mentoring,
things that you're getting. How is it for you to know like the value of coaching and then having to sort of go off and do it on your, like manage your brain after someone tells you should be at $1 billion already?
Yeah. I think for me, it's coming up in this industry with mostly men mentoring me who run their companies very differently than me has been, and I think as women, a lot of us have to kind of translate everything anyway into our own brain and our own language. And so with me, with mentoring, there's a lot of people telling me a lot of the time that I'm doing it wrong and that I should be doing it a different way. And so I always have to like step back because my brain would love to believe that it's doing it wrong. Right? Like, I knew it. You're doing it wrong. It's not working. But I also feel like there's no way that someone can tell me that what I'm currently doing is wrong if I'm getting the result that I want and that I've wanted. And so for me, being mentored is always like I have to kind of distill it through kind of a lens of what they see and what they want for me and what I actually want for me. And I think when I am mentoring other women, I think I've already done that filtering for them. And that's why for so long I wanted to find a woman that was in my industry doing business the way I'd been doing it, who was ahead of me to mentor me. So I do think that's a difference between maybe what you would have to do as my mentee versus what I have to do. I have a lot of men who are mentoring me right now because I don't have a woman in business that's further along in this industry that I can have mentor me.
What's that experience like? Because I think, and at least for the women I coach, a lot of them have been the first, right? So they're the first in their family to go to college or to get their doctoral degree or higher education degree, the first in that profession. Like they do a lot of firsts. And I get the sense from them sometimes that they're so incredibly lonely.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious for you at the level that you're at, if you feel comfortable sharing, of course, like how has it been for you to kind of look around and be like, I'm the only one so far?
Yeah. I don't feel lonely in the sense that I feel like I have y'all kind of in this community with me and we're all kind of working on the same thing. Where I feel lonely is when I have like these outlandish ideas Like I was telling you about like something I want to do at my live event that like everyone's like, you're crazy. Why are you doing that? Like you shouldn't do it that way. And that makes me feel like a little bit crazy on an island by myself. But I also really trust my own decision making, even if it's wrong. Like I always have my own back and it hasn't really let me down. And so, like, for example, in coach training, so my offer to the world is certification for people who want to become coaches. And you pay a one-time tuition fee, and then you don't really ever pay me again anything significant, right? In terms of being able to come to monthly calls, being able to come to mastermind for a pretty nominal fee. There's no like ongoing licensing fees, monthly fees, or anything like that. And so 9 times out of 10, somebody tells me that I'm doing that wrong, that I could be making so much more money and that I should be doing this and that and this and that and this and that. And I just know that they're wrong. Like, and I've just always known that they're wrong, but it's actually isolating to constantly, even though I see it working in my life and even though I'm making more money than a lot of these people who are giving me that advice and I'm more successful than them, to have everyone kind of disagreeing with me, that feels isolating.
Yeah.
Even when I'm right.
Well, and that's the funny thing is I was coaching a group of women recently and one of them said something perfectly reasonable, right? I notice women do this all the time. Yeah. They say it's perfectly reasonable thing that's very clear, extremely logical. And then she's like, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? Is that okay? And I think what I've observed in you as your mentee is like this assuredness that you seem to have. And I would like to borrow and have you sprinkle on me that like, here's my decision. Because I know for me, I have a tendency to poll people to make sure. So how did you come to that place where you're like, okay, whatever, I'm doing it wrong, air quotes, but I see the results of it. I'm going to just proceed forward.
It's a good question because I think that as humans, we like consensus and we like collaboration, right? And that's why having like a group of people that can support you in really big decisions, like being in a mastermind where like it's not just one person telling you that, I think can be really helpful because then we feel like we have like group support. And that's, you know, kind of that primitive need to have a collective. But I also know that leaders and innovators have to be willing to be lonely because we have to go out ahead and check it out and make sure that it's good before we ask people to follow us there. And so I think for me, I actually just recorded a podcast on this. I just think for me, I'm willing to go first and I'm willing to fail because that's what makes me stronger. And I'm willing to be lonely. I'm willing to be on the cutting edge of that and have people disagree with me. Now, when people disagree with me and I'm winning, it's a lot better than when people disagree with me and they're right and I'm losing. That really sucks.
But it's so human. And I think sometimes, you know, we hear our, you know, favorite leader, thought leader on a podcast or something. And I know I totally will cop to this. I had to take a lot of people off of pedestals within the last few years and be like, oh, you're human and you're human. Yeah. But I think we need to hear like, we're not always winning. Not everything's always a glaring success. Like I would love for that, but that's not the reality. So how do you balance that? Because I think on the one hand, you are obviously a really strong leader. You have the ability, and I know I spot it in you because I've got it in me, like the ability to enlist people on your vision. Like, here's this thing, let's go. And eventually you have like a little parade following behind you. But first, it can be lonely, especially if you have signs that it's not working right away. Yeah. So how do you balance like making sure people see that side because you are a human and it's good that they know you're a human. Yeah. And also strong leadership. Like, I don't fucking know what's going to happen, but let's roll. Like, how do you balance that? If there's a balance, so to speak.
I think a lot of times, this is actually an interesting question because I don't feel the need to be vulnerable. I don't feel the need to like show my vulnerability on purpose. I also don't feel a need to hide it, right? I feel like a lot of people try and show their vulnerability with some kind of agenda. And I don't think that that's, I don't know, something that I do deliberately. So it's actually super interesting. I just joined, speaking of mentors, I just joined this mentoring group. It's a mastermind group. And a lot of the people, this is kind of that out of body experience, right? A lot of the people already knew who I was. Like, I don't even know who any of the people in here, but they all knew of me because of the success of my business, I guess. And so like when I got there, I met this woman who was like hysterical. She does like funny ads, and we just like instantly hit it off and told very inappropriate jokes nonstop for 3 days and made up stories and ads for everything. And we just had this great time and we're laughing hysterically. And like people kept coming up to her and being like, oh my God, what's Brooke Castillo laughing so hard with you about? Like, she's usually so poised and she's usually so serious and she's usually so professional. And like, that is just not how I see myself at all.
That is not my experience of you at all.
Right? So I'm kind of like, what? Like, are you talking about? And these people don't listen to the podcast, right? So my podcast is where I'm really kind of truly me. They maybe saw me on a stage or they see me in a video. I don't know. But so, and then there's like this encouragement. Well, you need to show people more the real you. Like they really need to see like you as just a human who isn't like being professional, being a leader. And I think that's nonsense. I don't think I need to show up any certain way for anyone to perceive me a certain way. I am here to coach you or lead you or teach you. And what I do in terms of my own struggles, I will usually share in a way that is like educating you or helping you in some way, or I'm not sharing it just so you'll think I'm approachable and vulnerable. Because listen, I'm not very approachable.
But that makes sense, right? Like for me, like come hug me, just don't touch my hair and we're good. Like come squeeze me, totally fine. Just don't touch my fucking hair. That's my only rule. But like,
and does everyone want to touch your hair?
Yes, it's a thing. I didn't realize it was going to be a thing. Or the hats. People want to touch the hats.
They want to touch the hats, yeah.
They want to touch the hats. Like and I'm kind of weirdly, I'm feeling like getting used to coming off a stage and having that kind of a reaction. I mean, as a lawyer, it wasn't like the judge would applaud if I did something brilliant in court. I mean, I had a few moments where a judge was like, I've never seen anything like that. I'm like, I know, it was crazy, right? But it was like, no one gets up and applauds you. Like, that's not how you leave, you go back to your car. It's a very different experience. But I love what you said about vulnerability, because I recently gave a talk about how to be repulsive and repugnant. I kind of mentioned to you yesterday on a call, because I think there's this false sense that to be authentic, and I'm putting that in air quotes, that we have to overshare. And then the coach or the person, the speaking, the teacher becomes the center as opposed to the client being the center of whatever's happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is actually kind of an interesting thing that happened to me as I started to get more clients and more students. It became harder and harder to do selfies, with the students. And I had a group of, I think, 60 students. This is when I was pretty new in class. And one of my instructors told me, she's like, you really need to take selfies with these women. You've changed their life. They've come all this way, really want to have that kind of connection with you. And so I said, okay, that makes sense. And so at the end of the course, I stood there and took selfies. Okay, there's 60 people. Now, if each person talked to me for 1 minute, that would have been an hour of selfies, which just using the word hour and selfie in the same sentence is horrifying for me.
Are you getting sweaty?
But it wasn't 1 minute. How could it be 1 minute, right? This work that I have introduced them to has changed their lives. Like they want to share everything with me. But here's what happened. When they're sharing all of this information with me, this deep, like authentic information that was very emotional to them, I am not present there. I am wanting them to take their picture and go. And I can't connect and I can't coach them and I'm not supposed to talk to them because it'll just take longer. So it felt so out of integrity to me, and it felt very dismissive, and it felt like people were coming up to me feeling like we were going to have this very authentic experience. But taking a selfie with me is not an authentic experience because I don't want to be there. I don't like selfies. I don't even take selfies of my own face. Like, right? So for me to be in that situation was kind of like, well, you need to be like one with the people kind of thing. Like you need to be connecting with them. And I'm like, I actually don't, because that's not real for me. That's not true for me. That's not authentic for me. And if it means that someone's going to think I'm unapproachable, they're right. I am unapproachable. And, I'm friendly. Like if you walk by me and say something, I'm not going to be rude. Although some woman said she came up to me at Funnel Hacking Live and said, I need more rich friends. And she said that I glared at her, which doesn't seem right because I like rich people. But like to me, and this is real, like that's what being vulnerable is telling the truth about hating selfies. Being vulnerable to me is not taking a selfie with you. That's the opposite of vulnerable. That's me being fake. That's me lying. That's me people pleasing. Me telling you I hate a selfie, I don't want to take a selfie with you. That's more vulnerable. But people see it the other way, right? They see it's like this contrived vulnerability.
Yeah, I love that you said, because I think this at its heart, right? Like coming to any relationship dynamic, whether you're the coach and you have the clients coming to you, or you're the mentee and you're going to your mentor, like there has to be a foundation of honesty for that to even work.
Yes.
Like I'm going to be honest about my expectations of you, the client. And I want you to know that you're not going to be able to expect from me, in your case, a selfie. In my case,
right,
you're running your hands through my hair. Like that we're doing just like limitations, right? But if
there are limitations, right?
But we get to decide, like, you're never going to see me naked on the grams. I'm a style coach. You'd think, as much as I talk about bras and panties, that you would see me in them on occasion. Yeah. I'm not going to do that, folks. Like, it's not required. It's not necessary. And there are plenty of people who do that, and I adore them and I love them, and that's on brand for them.
And there's people that love selfies.
Yeah.
And people want to know much more about like my personal life. They want me to put all of that on Instagram. I just don't want to. And so for me, that's, if you want to do that, you should do that. I don't want to do that. That's not, and yes, it may cost me money. It may cost me clients. It may cost me likes. I'm down. Like for me, that's what, as a mentor, I'm always trying to, and this is a balance, right? Push people into past their comfort zone for their own benefit, never at their own expense. And I think that's where people get confused. It's like, oh, this is uncomfortable, therefore I should do it, is not a true statement. This is uncomfortable. Will this benefit me? Then I should do it. This is uncomfortable. This will not benefit me to do it. Does not mean that you should do it.
Okay. I'm going to just like, we're going to put a pin. That's so, like, Shannon, who is my assistant, please, that's our quotable for this episode. Thank you so much. But I think sometimes your work, especially when it comes to impossible goals, gets misunderstood in that particular way.
Yes.
That there's somehow like we have to like rile up our nervous system, do things that's going to put us into like panic attacks because it's an impossible goal. And I have never heard you say that nonsense, but I think it gets misinterpreted that way. So I love that you were like, wait a minute, hold up. There's a nuance here that's so important. So,
well, I do think that like it's important to be able to be uncomfortable. And I think if you're going to explore your own growth and your own capacity, you are going to have to stretch your current comfort zone. But that doesn't mean that you're uncomfortable for uncomfortable's sake. Yeah. And that's a huge difference, right? Doing something you don't genuinely want to do because it's uncomfortable will not make you stronger. Me taking selfies with you when it's a lie is very uncomfortable, but me doing it doesn't make me stronger or better or learn anything more. What it made me learn is that I was a liar. For those 2 hours that I stood there, I felt more out of integrity than I ever have because I agreed to do something because someone else said that I should.
But I think that is one of the things that's interesting about a mentor-mentee relationship, because you do offer advice, right? Like, you drop possibility. We had a call, I think on not this Monday, but the last Monday. And I went away and I was like, there are notes, there are things, I need a moment. Like, wow. And it was amazing. But I think that perhaps me like 3 years ago would have been like, I have to do everything she says and the way that she said it. And what was her intonation when she said, like, I would have over ruminated because me. So how do you create a relationship where the mentee can come to you and honestly say, okay, I'm super uncomfortable, and also push them? Like, there's a give and take there in that dynamic. How do both parties come into that being honest?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm always telling my students, my mentees, like, hey, listen, you can do whatever you want. This is your life. You're a grown-ass woman. You can make your own decisions. And like my best girlfriend, I'm like, girl, you can charge that if you want. I think you're out of your mind, but you can do what you want, right? So I'm always like, hey, this is what could be. And if you choose not to do that, like, you have to make your own decisions for you. And that's one of the balances as a mentor that you have to do. Like, I always want to push my students as hard as I can without them falling over the edge, right? Right up to the edge, right? And if they come back and I push them back over there, and they come back and I push them back over there. And so a lot of my mentees do not take my advice. To their own peril.
Dun, dun, dun.
But for me, being able to have the perspective that I do and kind of the vision that I do for them, like, I will always provide it, but everyone always has their own agency. And of course, I can't be right about every single thing. But one of the things that I feel like I'm able to do kind of in an exceptional way is offer things that even if they aren't successful, will make my students grow and will make them be introduced to themselves in a way that they haven't been. And so a lot of the work that I do is, are you willing to let go of who you are to be who you could be? And that is a very difficult question to answer, because what we're good at, what works, is what we're most attached to. And that is also what's keeping us where we are. So, and it's heartbreaking to watch people not do what I tell them to do. But I also get it. I totally get it.
I mean, I haven't had the experience on the scale that you have, but when I, had younger attorneys and they'd come to my office and, they set up camp and they're like, okay, what should I do? I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you, but I don't think you're going to be willing to have the hard conversation you need to have. So what do you think you should do? Because if I tell you what I would do, I don't think you're ready. Like, you haven't built the muscle up to go do that yet. So then it was heart-wrenching, because I'd be like, okay, well, I didn't do what you said, and now this mess has been created. It's like, I don't want to tell you I told you so, but I love you.
Oh
so
my
much.
gosh.
I told you so, dear Jesus.
And listen, I've been on the receiving end of that, right? So I've been on that position where I was told, hey, do this, do this, do this. And when I first signed up with my first mentor, I agreed to do every single thing he told me to do. And I don't regret it at all, because even the stuff that I did that didn't work, I learned so much. And I think when we can, and you have to trust your mentors, right? It's like when you can trust and you can do stuff, even though it may not succeed, your success will be so much faster. It's like when you're relying on your own brain to feel comfortable before it does something, it's just fine. It just takes so much longer because our own brains are so locked into the past. They slow us down so much.
Yeah.
So this example, I'm sure it's how you felt after you and I got off the call, and I'm like, and this, and this, and this, and this. And my girlfriend, we actually went to a spa, and I'm like, here's what you should do. You should set this up, and you should charge this, and you should do this. And she was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm going to do it. And then she went to bed that night, woke up the next morning, and she was like, I can't breathe. I can't sleep. I can't move. This is too hard. She was like having a hard time breathing. And I was like, okay, so you're either at this point going to back off and slow down and be more gentle with yourself, or you're going to ride this wave of exhilaration.
Well, and exhilaration has like a fright quality to it.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
There's excitement, and then there's exhilaration, which has like tinges of fright, and you kind of have to be ready for that. And I felt the same way. I got off the call with you. I felt exhilarated. I called my dear friends who are also coaches, and I was like, and then, and they were like all in it. We were in it. And the next morning I woke up and it was like
you're like, I'm not doing any hangover. Of it.
Well, then I tried to lawyer it. I was like, did she actually say that? Or did she say this? Right?
She didn't mean that, did she?
But she told me, hell no. I mean, she didn't really mean that. We try to negotiate it. So
isn't it interesting though, the relationship between a mentor and a mentee. It's kind of like, okay, I trust that she knows what she's saying. I believe that she thought this through. I want it to be true. Can I actually do it?
Yes.
Like, that's it. And sometimes the answer is hell no. And that's okay. But sometimes I think the magic of a mentor sometimes is you borrow their belief for a minute.
Yes.
And there's a magical thing that can happen. And I know you've experienced it's this magical thing that can happen where you take a leap of faith because someone believes in you more than you believe in yourself. And that shit works. And then that belief that you were borrowing from them then becomes your belief. Right. And I think that for me, that's the magic of having a mentor is like, I remember when I said to my mentor, you know, I want to make $1 million. And he was like, that's a good start. And I was like, oh my God, he believed in it so much more than I did at that moment that I just borrowed that from him. And then I did it and then it was mine. It was like so cool. And he told me, I remember, it's so funny now, but I remember had 10 people. I was training 10 people at a time. So if you know now, I train 1,000 people at a time,
Yes.
right? But 10 people at a time, and I was charging them $3,000. And he said, maybe you could do 25 people at a time for $6,000. And I was like, never. Impossible. I can't even fathom it. Like I could not wrap my mind around. He had just said it so casually. Do you know what I'm saying?
No,
like,
I know. Because you've done that to me. So that's why I'm kind of giggling.
Like, no, this is not a thing. And the whole time you don't understand. He just doesn't understand. He just doesn't get it. He just doesn't understand. He just doesn't. Right. But I had already committed to doing what he wanted to say, what he had told me. And of course, it sold so much faster and so much better because the perceived value was higher. Nobody cared that there were 25 people. And then it was like, you don't have to teach it in person. You don't have to teach it live. Like all of these things that I ended up doing because someone else could see something that I couldn't see is so wild to me because I look back on it now and I'm like, what was I thinking?
And you have like, you're a visionary and an innovator.
Yeah.
So it's not like you don't see far out into the future. That's also one of your gifts, but we still need humans to come alongside us.
Oh my God. I thought no one would ever buy from me again. I genuinely thought there's no way someone would pay me $6,000 for this. I will have no clients. He will ruin my business. I was so attached to what was working and so like committed to it and so proud of it that it was really hard for me to be willing to risk it. And I think that's why most people don't come close to their capacity because they find a little something that works. They become an attorney.
Yeah.
Right? Think about it. They become an attorney and that works well enough, even though they may hate it, even though it's not, but they're not willing to let that go for what could be because it works well enough. You know what I mean? And so I was just talking to a woman who was a doctor about the same thing. She's like, how do I give up being a doctor to be a life coach? And I told her, I said, it's impossible. That's why you have to do it. Right? It seems so impossible.
It seems so impossible. Like, I mean, I think it was like a team effort. I feel like every master coach had their hands on this brain at some point. There were a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And I mean, I went back actually, I think, months ago, and I went through all of the times I had been coached, like in Scholars and Diamond and VIP. I would show up a hot mess. I mean, and I always show up a hot mess to be coached. Like I always cry. Yeah. But there were some times where I'm like clearly had just rolled out of bed and like I look a hot mess, or I'm driving somewhere and I'm like freaked out. I'm like, I'm pulling over. And you were just like always so calm and like would never lose patience with me in terms of like I'm being coached on the same fucking thing over and 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 over for 3 years before I finally was like, and oh, that's what she meant when she said you have to love it before you leave it. Oh, that's what she meant when she said you had to have an actual fucking plan and not just making up dates where you do things to scare yourself. I don't know if you remember that conversation.
I do.
We had these, it took time. And I think that's an interesting thing about a mentor-mentee relationship is like sometimes you got to be in them for the long haul. It's not like
Yeah.
your mentee is going to have some overnight transformation, especially
But
if
it
you're asking them to
doesn't
get comfortable.
have to take so much time, my mentee child. It really doesn't. Because if you think about it now, you made that decision in a moment.
True.
It feels like it was over a 3-year period, but really you just decided, okay, enough is enough. This is it. I'm going to do this, right? And so that's what I want more of in my life. Even though I'm very decisive, it's like I watch my brain like kind of roll back on ideas and like get scared, and then it moves forward and makes a decision, and then it's like, oh, maybe not. It's like really, really fascinating to watch the human brain convince us that we're less than we are. It's so unfortunate.
It is so unfortunate. The poor dear, she doesn't know any better.
She just doesn't know. And so it's like when you look back on yourself now, you know, if you were coaching yourself 3 years ago, you would be the exact same. You'd be like, girl, it's going to be fine. You're going to be great. It's all going to work out. Like, I never have any doubt because I can see it so clearly because I don't have to deal with the relentless brain that is in your head.
Yes, true. So I want to talk about that magic because and I don't want to call it magic, but whatever that skill ability that you have to see in people what they're not quite seeing and hold the belief for them and then let them borrow it from you. Because that's a special skill. And I think people would love to be mentors or step into leadership roles. Yeah. But that's its own kind of special alchemy. Like if we could distill that down, what do you think that is?
I think it's when you've genuinely done the work on yourself, when you have genuinely, I mean, really been the alchemist to yourself and you have transmuted your suffering yourself and you understand it, it's clear as day in other people. So if a woman came to you and just said, I hate my body. I hate it. And I will never be able to love any part of it ever. You're just like, there's no part of you that believes her.
No.
Not 1 ounce of one part. I am not lovable. This body is unacceptable. I will never love myself. It's kind of like, oh, cutie.
Oh, love bug. Come here. On. We could start with an eyelash, your left pinky toe. Certainly, there's some tiny little part of you.
I got you. You're so lovable and so worthy and so amazing and so delicious and so awesome that it's comical to me in my brain how little we think of ourselves sometimes, right? And so if someone were to come to you and say something like that, like it's not that you don't understand what they are. You don't understand. It's not that you don't understand how much pain they're in. It's just you don't agree with any of it ever. There's no part of me that ever thinks that baby that's crawling will never learn how to walk. It doesn't matter how many times he falls and cries. I'm never going to think, well, maybe he's not going to walk. Maybe he won't figure this out. I mean, he's fallen 6 times. You know, it's just never a thought. You're just like, and at some point he will take a step and then another and then another, and then he will be running eventually. And so when someone comes to me, that's kind of how I picture it. It's like if one of my sons were, you know, how old are they when they walk? Like 1 year old, and was like convinced he would never walk. Like, how do you not have patience with that? You're not like, what the fuck's wrong with you? This is not that hard. Get on it. You're just like, I get it. I get that you think that you're not going to make $5 million. But Judith, there's not even one part of me that doubts that day will come.
You know, the more, I would joke, like, the more I talk to you, the more money I make. Like, every time I talk to you, I make more money. It's just, like, phenomenal. Because I believe that you, like, and at first I was like, she has something every time I talk to her. And then I'm like, no, I start to believe something different about myself every time I talk to her. And I'm more in that belief than I've ever been. And
but you know what it is? This is what it is.
Tell us the things.
It's the truth. So it's not like the truth is you'll make $5 million. It's just a fact. It's a ceiling. Okay. I'm not making it up. It just is. Right. And I know that it is. So for me, I don't feel like I have to convince you. I don't have to I don't have to like get upset about it or whatever. It's just like, listen, this is available to you whenever you'd like to claim it. It's just waiting. And then you're like, but, and then, oh my, and yeah. And I'm like, do your thing. And
I wish I was that calm. It's more like maniacal crying. It's more what it looks like, folks. I wish it was that pretty.
But you know what it is? It's like, I first did this work with weight loss, and I will tell you that for me, it wasn't even about weight loss. For me, it was about, will I be able to be in the presence of food and not be tormented? That felt like the most impossible thing to ever rid myself of, because it was so compelling and so compulsive and so all-consuming. And there came a day when I walked into my pantry and there was a package of Oreos. There wasn't a row missing. There was a package of Oreos that had been in there for a week. And I remember thinking, oh shit, this was always available to me. This freedom has always been available to me. I just now claimed it. And I see that when I was over drinking. I see it when I was under earning. I see it when I was under loving. All of my relationships, everything. It's like, it's already available. My capacity is already here. Your $5 million is already sitting right in front of you right now. I don't even feel like the need, like I have to help you figure out how to get it. I'm just like, would you just pick it up?
I'm like, you should see. Well, some of you are going to be able to see my face on YouTube. You just saw the look of aghast on my face, right? Like, but I part of me, this is my thought. And for my dear Christians, I don't mean this in a rude way. I'm like, I claim that in Jesus' name. I'm like, yes, thank you.
In Jesus' name, amen. Yes.
But like, that's the beauty of this kind of a dynamic, right?
Yes.
Like you see it so clearly. You don't have to convince me or cajole me or berate me or, militant scream or any of those things.
Yeah.
That's not my experience of you at all, right? Like you just like drop a possibility, give me that look, that like beautiful, serene look that you give. And then I'm just like, oh, like the earth just shifted and I have to reorient myself in it.
Yeah. But there are times with many of my students or mentees that I'm working with where they're arguing for their limitations and I am stronger with them. And I'm like, listen, stop. This is not okay. This is not necessary. This is not useful. We have to stop doing this. And so I do think that you have to understand who you're working with. And, like I said, you got to push them right up to the edge, but they can't fall off because you lose them. Okay, let's climb back up. Let's try that again. Right. It's the same with myself. Right. It's like sometimes I forget who I am and what I'm capable of. And, that's having someone in your life that can remind you and encourage you. And till the day I die, I never want to keep wondering what else.
Yeah. I think that was one of the things that, and it ended up in my book one of the things you imparted to me was like, we have one, at least so far as we know, right?
Yeah.
We have one life. What do you want to do with it? Like
Yeah.
you're such a choice here. And I think before I thought like there is a pathway and there's only one pathway. And if I veer from the pathway, God will smite me. And then I was like, okay, maybe he won't smite me. And there are multiple paths and everything's okay. Wait a minute. And now I can live from that. But I think it was really hard to get on board at first. And I think I was so worried about doing it right that it kept me from just doing things. And that's why it probably took me 3 years to get to where I ended up, right?
Well, and just worrying like, what will they think? And, am I doing it right? And what should I be doing? And I think when we let go of all of that and we realize that there is no one way that we should be living our lives. I think that's kind of step one, right? When we understand. And I think that's what a mentor can do. It's like remind you, hey, remember, there's no rules here. You don't have to live your life a certain way. There's no right way. But we're kind of brought up in this tradition that there's right and wrong and good and bad. We spend so much time trying to be right and good that we miss out on ourselves and what we truly have to offer. And so instead of looking for what's right and good, I think we need to look for what we desire and what we're capable of. And the truth of that is there's going to be so much right and wrong in that. And there's going to be so much good and bad in that. And when we can use our energy to keep moving forward instead of trying to avoid wrong and bad, that's when life gets fun.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do a lot of things wrong.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that are bad within all of us that people will hate us for. And I'm down. I don't like selfies, y'all. Hate away. Hate away.
Which I love that that's like, it's such a great example because I think there's so much, and I will just say from my own experience, sometimes like crazy immense people pleasing, and especially if you're in a crowd and the crowd sort of sweeps you up. We were at an event and I don't know if you remember, they snatched you up, like you got encircled and there's this really funny selfie. And you were
so like genuinely scary. I was like, my people are attacking me.
They were so, I mean, they just like, you got swept up. And I remember looking over my corner, like over my shoulder in the corner. And I was like, oh, it's like, we got to get her out of there. Like that happened really fast. Like this, I mean,
and you know what was interesting? I know exactly what you're talking about. What was so interesting about that is like somebody snapped a selfie and then someone saw someone snap one, right? So then they came over and then they all wanted one. But they lost their minds a little bit, right? They were like squishing me and like moving me around and like selfieing me against my own will. Completely unintentionally. Like I watched the whole thing happen. And then I genuinely was afraid of a group of short women.
Well, and you towered over them, which even made it funnier. It's like,
which is funnier, right? But all of a sudden I was like, actually could be dangerous. But I also see how I attract that, right? Because I'm resisting it, then I bring it in. So it's like, if I'm just super honest about it and I just say, this is what's real. And if you don't like what's real about me, you don't like me. If you only like me when I'm pretending, you don't even like me at all. And that's not a relationship I want to have with anyone.
No.
So I think that's part of the work that I like to do with my students too, is like, what is true for you? What is real for you? And what are you hiding from? And figuring that out, right? Kind of what we referred to earlier. Like I may not be charging more or moving forward or expanding because I'm afraid. And to go through that discomfort would be for my benefit. Or I may not be doing something because it's genuinely out of integrity for me. And going through that would be against my benefit. It would be at my expense. And you're the only one that can know that.
I love that. And I think too, we outsource the authority oftentimes.
Yes.
Especially in this kind of a dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Like we outsource the authority. Well, you know, what would she think? Or would she say? How would she? And it's like, I don't know if you remember this. The first time I met you in person, I went up to you. It was after the podcast live event. And I remember standing here like, I don't want a selfie. We just started laughing. And I was like, I don't want a selfie. No offense. I don't want a picture of you. And we were just cracking up.
You're like,
laughing.
I don't want a selfie of you anyway. I'm like, good.
Rude. Why did you just assume? I don't want your picture. But like, we were laughing because it was like
That's
this
amazing.
really funny moment. And I remember like relaxing into like, okay, like she's made this beautiful stance. I totally respect that stance. Now we can meet on this like very human, very real level. And I think sometimes when we're outsourcing the authority to our mentor, we never get to that beautiful moment of like hysterical laughter of like, you're real, I'm real. We're so real in this moment.
Yeah.
And then you can impart something to me because I'm able to receive it.
That's actually interesting because I do think there's a balance, right? Because there are times where I feel like I outsource to my mentors and that's why I hire them. Like I let them kind of make a decision for me sometimes. And I have to test it against my own ethics and values and morality, of course. But beyond that, like I'll try something and I'll be like, I want to try this. And part of me is like, I don't think it's going to work, but I want to try it and prove that it doesn't. And sometimes it does work. And I'm like, but other times it doesn't. And so you have to decide like, when should you kind of borrow insight or knowledge or belief from your mentor and when shouldn't you? And I think it's an art, not a science.
Yeah, definitely an art.
But it's not, I think what your point is it's not a definitive always, I'll do whatever they say. Unless you've committed to doing that, like I did, right? At the beginning, I'm willing to try any business thing that feels in integrity to me.
But it served your purposes, right? Like
yes,
but it was a decision you made from like you say, prefrontal cortex.
Yes.
Like your higher brain functioning helped you make that decision. It wasn't from this place in the back of your brain where I call her Tallulah, where Tallulah was like, you will fail if you don't follow the plan. Like that's a totally
or
different
she'll be
energy.
disappointed, or she'll be upset with you, or you're not going to be pleasing her. Those are the opposite reasons why you want to do it. And so I think that's why in any kind of mentor relationship, you have to be honest, be like, hey, I don't really want to raise my price. Can you help me figure out if it's because I'm afraid or if it's because I have a good logical reason here? Right. And that's why I'm always like, okay, tell me what your reason is. Do you like that reason? Because so many times our reason is just fear.
Oh, straight up.
Yeah.
I mean, the pricing drama I had, wowza. And I remember we made a deal. I couldn't coach anyone anymore. And I cried hysterically if I didn't charge them money, which I thought, I look back, I think that's like the funniest thing in the world. And then we made a deal. You're like, okay, you're going to charge this price point. You're going to get 10 people at that price point. And then we're going to make a deal. You have to raise your price to the next level after those 10. And I remember the first 3 and I was like, oh my God, I've totally undercharged. But I had to at least be willing to go to you and say, honestly, I'm super uncomfortable.
Yeah. I
do recognize the value in what you're saying because I do respect the dynamic here. How do we get me through that so I can get to the other side, right? And that's a give and take, but I don't know that everyone shows up to a mentor-mentee relationship that way. So what makes a good mentee in that kind of a dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, I think there has to be a willingness to tell your mentor the truth, and there has to be a willingness to risk disappointment. Because I think any mentor relationship, and I'll speak from me as the mentee, like I don't ever want to disappoint the person that's helping me. Like if they've told me to do something or they're recommending and I just doesn't feel right, like I don't want them to be upset with me. I don't want them to be disappointed in me. I don't want them to think I'm not doing a good job. I'm actually going through this right now with someone who's mentoring me on something and we're having a disagreement on it. Like we actually kind of had a little bit of a brawl about it. And from their perspective, they're like, you're paying me to guide you here and you're not taking my guidance. And I'm like, I recognize that. And I'm taking this chance on purpose because I really do like my reason. Right. And so, but there are other times and I just have to make sure, am I not doing this because I'm afraid? Because if I check myself and I'm not doing something because I'm afraid, then I need to go to the mentor and tell them that. That's my deal with myself. And I'll be like, yo, I don't want to raise my prices because I'm afraid no one will buy it. I'm afraid if I add 10 more people to coach training, I won't have a business anymore. Because then if you tell the truth, then you can talk through how you're wrong or right. Or you make a deal. Okay, do it 3,000 for 10, add 2 more, whatever. Let's inch our way through it. So I think, I don't know. You have to balance between being stubborn and set in your own ways, because that's just going to keep getting you as a mentee is going to keep getting me what I've always been getting. And also trusting and respecting myself when I don't agree with something that the mentor is saying. And I've kind of kicked myself a couple times for not following through on what a teacher has instructed me to do, who definitely knows better and has more experience. But sometimes I'm willing to take the hits like that. Yeah. I wish I didn't. As much and the reason why I ended up when I hired Frank doing everything they told me to do is because my husband at the time was like, I watch you coach these people and I watch them not listen to you and I watch them not get the success they deserve. So you should just do whatever this guy says. It was like such amazing advice.
Yeah.
Because it just took me right out of everything that I'd currently been doing and was so attached to.
I love that, like, at whatever stage you're at, you still have a human brain. It's still going to want to fight for, its limitations, its homeostasis. Like that's what brains love. Like, can we just keep things status quo and chill here? Like we're alive.
Even when the status quo is terrible.
Yes.
Even when you're allegedly dating someone that may not be good for you. Brain's like, this would be amazing to keep doing. And that's with business too. It's like we get attached to something that isn't serving us. We get attached to it. Think about that. It's like you coaching for free. It's crazy.
I was so attached to it. Yeah. I was running a fashion charity, in the words of our mutual friend. She's like, you're running a fashion charity. You're like, you're running a fucking fashion charity. I was like, oh, okay. I see y'all. All right. My moonwalk out of the room. Okay. I see you. But it was the best.
I get it.
Yeah. I love that. I love this conversation. So let's say, someone is going to step into a mentor role. Like, what's the one piece of advice to take us home and then tell us where we can find more out about you and all the good things? Should someone not know who you are?
If you're going to be a mentor, I think you must truly understand how to hold space. And that is not something that comes naturally to human beings. And so even as a mentor, you will be giving advice, but you can't ever possibly know truly what's best for the person that you're helping. You cannot know that. You can offer them all the advice. You can see it really clearly. You can tell them that. But at the end of the day, you don't know. You don't know shit about what they should do with their life. And so being able to offer ideas and offer suggestions and not be attached to the outcome is really, truly an art. And if you're not secure and you haven't done your own work, you will try and control their success or lack of success. You will try and get too involved and control it. And that, I think, is irresponsible and not useful to anyone. It's not useful for you as the mentor, and it's definitely not useful to the mentee. So I would say that, if you're going to take on someone and mentor them, you need to make sure you know how to hold space, period. Because I've seen it done very poorly.
Yeah. And that's something that you learn right away. I'm going to plug it because I love it.
Plug it because you love it.
Plug it because you love it. That's a whole little dance. We should record that. And when I see you next, we'll do a little dance. But
let's go.
Coach certification program is one of the first things you learn and that is taught in the program is how to hold space, because it is such an art that is not often taught. And people think because they get the moniker coach that they're suddenly entitled to go tell people about themselves and the things that they should be doing. And it's so not what we do.
Yeah. So, I may say, hey, you should increase your price and you should double down on this and you should do this other thing. I think that would be amazing for your business. And that could be correct. It actually is. But the truth is, whatever happens after that point is you cannot be attached to your mentee doing that. That's when you get into trouble and you start trying to control. When you start trying to control people, you ruin your own life and you also can cause trouble for them. And so I think that is the most important thing. And just being able to believe and love your client. If you can't believe in them and love them, you have no business offering them any kind of coaching or mentoring.
Amen. Preach. Yes.
Reach.
Preach. All right.
I have to go, my friend.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you too. Thank you for being on the podcast. This is amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. To learn more about how to work with me, go to judithgaton.com. Click on the Start Here button to get access to my free personal style class. I give you a quick style win, a confidence boost, and you walk away with the tools to start getting stylish. Who doesn't love that? See you there. Miss J out.